pericoloso. L'assassino potrebbe essere ancora qui.
In the spirit of Christmas, a young woman named Susanna travels all the way from Milan to her family's countryside home. When she arrives at the house, she is met by a woman she doesn't know, although the woman knows her. Susanna asks who she is, and the woman introduces herself as Maria, the new maid. Susanna recalls that her father, Marcello, mentioned Maria in his letters. After tipping the driver, he heads on his way. Instead of Maria ushering Susanna inside, she gives her a look, saying they weren't expecting her this early. Women sure do have drama. Susanna just tells her she managed to catch an earlier train, and asks if she could enter. That's when Maria remembers her place and steps aside. The first thing Susanna does when she enters is head straight to her grandmother, Rochelle. She teases the old woman, who's genuinely surprised to see her. Rochelle jokingly calls her an idiot, making Susanna chuckle. She asks how things have been, and Rochelle tells her what almost all old people say, "What do you think?" Maria returns downstairs, and Rochelle asks for her pills. Margarita, Susanna's mother, comes out just then, and is surprised to see that Susanna has arrived early. Susanna repeats what she told Maria, and Margarita comments on how different she seems. When Margarita air kisses her cheeks, she immediately notices Susanna has been smoking. Since no child would ever admit that to their parents, Susanna denies, blaming the innocent cab driver. She quickly changes the topic, asking about Marcello. Margarita reveals he hasn't left the house in days, simply because he got lazy. He sleeps in the guest room, and everyone in the house has already accepted it for what it is. Margarita is even grateful, since she no longer has to hear the generator sounds coming out of him when he sleeps. Maria brings Rochelle's pills, and Susanna uses the opportunity to ask for breakfast. When Maria leaves, Susanna curiously asks Margarita,
Intorno una così. Del sud? No, mamma.
"Doesn't it bother you to be around someone like that?" Margarita misunderstands, thinking Susanna is talking about where Maria comes from. However, Susanna is focused on how pretty Maria looks, especially since their last maid was 70 years old. Well, Margarita doesn't seem to care about that. Maria was brought in at the last minute because Adele fell off a window. Before Susanna can even go over this sad information, Maria notifies them about breakfast, the topic immediately forgotten. Agostina, Margarita's sister, joins them at the table, and Susanna happily greets her. Agostina begins complaining about Caterina, Susanna's younger sister's antics. The culprit comes out just then, and Susanna joyfully hugs her. Like a true lastborn, Caterina playfully taunts Agostina, and Margarita even supports her. Deciding it's time to wake up Marcello, Margarita says, "Maria, can you bring him his coffee? And let him know that I'm with Susanna." Maria carries her tray dutifully and begins knocking at his door. Susanna, Margarita, and Rochelle leave the dining room, but Maria stops them, saying Marcello isn't answering. Margarita tells her to just enter, since Marcello can be hard of hearing sometimes. Just as she opens the door, the next thing everyone hears is a shrill scream, and the sound of glass breaking. Agostina and Caterina rush in, and they all wonder what's wrong, clearly worried. Maria comes out looking frightened, calling Marcello's name. Eager to know what's happening, everyone asks, "He's?" And Maria reveals, he's murdered. They don't understand how this can be, and Maria reveals there is a knife stuck in his back. Caterina rushes up the stairs to see for herself, while the rest begin crying. Closing the door, Caterina runs straight into her mother's arms, confirming the ugly truth. Margarita decides to go see, but finds out the door has been locked. Caterina reveals she locked it, saying no one can go into the room until they get in touch with the police. Margarita is displeased by this, but Caterina remains insistent. However, Margarita succeeds in collecting the keys, and she enters her husband's room. Agostina, Susanna, and Caterina join her, and they are all horrified to see Marcello lying face down with the knife on his back. Afterward, they all try to revive Agostina, but to no avail. Knowing her sister, Margarita comes and gives her a hot slap, which immediately does the trick. Agostina dramatically asks Maria to call the doctor, but Margarita stops her. She feels they have Marcello's death to focus on, and not Agostina's theatrics. This makes Agostina remember why she fainted in the first place, and she drops down again. Margarita is tired of her, and urges everyone to just leave her. Rochelle comments on Marcello's dwindling business, saying she didn't think he'd take things this far just because his business wasn't doing well. How on earth would someone stab themselves on the back for crying out loud? Margarita points this out, telling her Marcello definitely didn't act alone. Rochelle still tries proving her point, but Maria stops her, insisting Marcello was really murdered. She feels they must call the police, and Caterina immediately leaves the room. When she returns, she announces that the phone line has been cut off, which makes the women even more horrified. If it wasn't clear it was a murder before, it is now. To make matters worse, they hear a clanging sound, which wakes Agostina up. She suggests it might be the shutters in Katerina's room, since the sound is similar. Katerina moves to close it, but Margarita stops her, saying, "It's dangerous. The killer may be in the house with us." Just then, the electricity in the house begins frizzling, instilling more terror in everyone. They decide it would be best to close the shutters, but no one wants that responsibility. Everyone looks towards Maria, since she's the maid, and she is left with no choice but to carry out the brave task. They all move towards the stairs, and Maria returns, assuring everyone that no stranger is in the house. A thought crosses Maria's mind, and she reveals the dogs never barked all night. They always bark at everything, and this can only mean no stranger came into the house. Susanna realizes the killer must have known the house well, which Maria agrees to. Margarita suggests they all have tea, which everyone agrees to. Afterward, they all gather together, trying to piece every single detail from last night. Taking the lead, Susanna begins asking questions and discovers Maria was the last person to use the phone. That means the phone was still working at 7 o'clock, and the killer must have been around. Susanna asks about Marcello's enemies and business associates, but Margarita has no clue since he never talked about it. Recalling Rochelle's comment about Marcello's dwindling business, she asks Rochelle about this, and Rochelle reveals, "He was penniless. He was even asking me for my stocks." Margarita is surprised by this, but Rochelle continues anyway, saying Marcello became furious when she refused. Margarita wonders why she refused, since Marcello seemed desperate. Besides, all Rochelle does is keep her stocks under her mattress. Though they aren't worth millions, they are a reasonable amount, and Margarita can't understand why Rochelle refused to give them to the family that hosts and supports her. Agostina jumps into the conversation, asking Margarita if she's really bringing up hospitality at this moment, but Margarita attacks her back. Seems Agostina and Rochelle have become permanent fixtures despite plans of moving for a short stay. Susanna cautions her mother and continues with her questions. Marcello had a new business partner, Ser Gianutri, who never misses a chance to show up at dinner, especially when Maria is cooking. Susanna wonders if he ever had a reason to resent Marcello, but Maria feels he is ruled out. He has a few cats, and whenever he came around, the dogs would bark like crazy. Given they never did last night, it only means it couldn't have been Gianutri. When Susanna learns he wouldn't benefit from Marcello's murder, she asks who inherits the estate. All eyes turn to Margarita. She admits she's supposedly the one, as half goes to the spouse and the other half to the children, though she's not sure since she isn't an attorney. Katerina points out it's a different case if the will happens to mention Veronica, the love of Marcello's life. They all know the two were close, and Katerina asks if they were seeing each other again. Though Margarita isn't happy with the line of conversation, she replies they were just friends. However, Veronica has been living in town lately after buying a house. Margarita admits they meet up, they go on walks together, they go riding. But since I detest horses, I'm happy to stay away. Seems it's only Margarita who doesn't see the full picture here. Well, Margarita feels Veronica is insignificant. Susanna asks her about the time Marcello went to bed last night, but Margarita has no idea. Agostina feels she would know if they actually slept together, but Margarita turns on her, accusing her of loving Marcello for many years now. She tries denying, but when Margarita tells her no one wants her, she instantly drops the charade. She feels no one sees her suffering, knowing that her one true soulmate lives in the same house, married to her sister. Guess the cats are jumping out of the bags. Agostina feels Margarita has a cold heart of stone, since Marcello was alone. Margarita wasn't with him, and she, who wanted that so much, couldn't be with him. Katerina wonders if Agostina realizes what she's saying, asking if that's how she's chosen to repay Margarita's generosity for letting her stay in the house all these years. But Agostina just says it was a platonic love. Afterward, the women huddle together talking about Maria. Apparently, she is the sister to Gianutri's housekeeper. Maria can hear them from the fireplace and wonders if they are speculating about her. She feels she has no reason to murder Marcello, but Susanna doesn't think so. Dissatisfied servants are always the prime suspects. She feels Maria was too sure about the dogs, but Maria admits she didn't get much sleep. She had a strange feeling because Marcello appeared nervous when she brought his tea around midnight. The women are surprised by this revelation, and Katerina wonders how they can be sure she isn't the killer, since she was the last to see Marcello alive. Maria just laughs and insists she doesn't have the motive. She adds that she's the only one who actually doesn't, making the women conscious and displeased. As Margarita tries to scold her, Rochelle's wails stop her. Her stocks have been stolen. Seems they not only have a murderer on their hands, but also a thief. And being a drama queen, of course, Agostina faints again. Afterward, they all gather at the dining room to talk about this. Agostina feels Rochelle knowingly made the stocks disappear because she wanted to sell it and leave her out of the inheritance. Margarita doesn't think so, since the stocks mean so much to Rochelle. Rochelle confirms, insisting she never leaves her room all night and literally sleeps on them, but Agostina accuses her, saying she hears her moving around all the time. Margherita leaves the room, but Agostina follows, asking if she was the one who stole the stocks to keep the money for herself. She accuses her of marrying Marcello for his fortune, but this makes Margherita lose her temper. Despite giving Marcello 2 beautiful daughters, she never got the life she wanted in the house. She decides to go to the police station and storms out. A few seconds later, she runs back in, saying, "The car won't start. Someone's cut the engine wires." Everyone is terrified at this, but Agostina feels it rules most of them out since they don't know their way around a car. However, she doesn't rule out Susanna and Caterina. Margherita isn't pleased by this, wondering if they look like mechanics, and Susanna proves her innocence by admitting she doesn't even own a license. They notice a figure at the window just then, making everyone terrified since they think it's the killer. The women scramble upstairs, leaving poor Rochelle there on her wheelchair. A hard knock halts their escape. With no other choice, Margherita tells the person to come in, and they are all surprised to see Veronica. They begin questioning her presence, and she reveals she received a strange call an hour ago, saying Marcello was murdered last night. She insists on seeing Marcello, but the women create a blockage on the stairs. However, she gets her way and heads straight to the door. She realizes it's locked and asks them to open it so she can see how he's feeling. With no other option, Margherita admits the truth. Veronica is taken aback and reveals it was a woman's voice on the call. Margherita wonders how she knew Marcello's room, but Veronica just wants to see Marcello for herself. Margherita directs her to the key, but the door refuses to open. Margherita tries it herself with the same result. She realizes someone has put a fake key, making Veronica wonder who. Caterina thinks Veronica is the one. Without any form of remorse, Veronica admits she used to share the room with Marcello most nights. Things are definitely getting interesting. Margherita can't believe this, since Marcello bought the house when they were still engaged, but Veronica only chuckles, revealing he bought it from her grandmother. Margherita feels the house belongs to her now, but Veronica doesn't think so because she won't be able to enjoy it when she gets arrested. Agostina angrily marches to her and asks if she's been coming to the house lately. Veronica denies, but Agostina doesn't believe her. Veronica admits Marcello told her a lot about Agostina, which instantly brightens her mood. This turns a complete 180 when Veronica implies that Agostina was the one forcing herself on Marcello. Maria doesn't believe Veronica's phone call story, but Veronica just moves to leave, telling Margherita they'll see at the funeral. Caterina stops her, "Because you're a suspect now, too." This doesn't concern Veronica, and she goes ahead to open the door, only to see the heavy snowstorm outside. Guess she has no choice than to stay now. Afterward, they all sit together, and Veronica points out every woman, wondering who the killer might be. Susanna reminds her she's also a suspect, but Veronica feels this is impossible, given she just arrived. Susanna insists she could have come back just to mislead them. She is definitely sure the killer is one of the women. Caterina reminds her that she's forgetting herself, but Susanna defends herself, saying she arrived in the morning. Caterina feels she might have come back to also mislead them, revealing Susanna was actually in the house last night. Everyone is shocked by this, including Susanna. Apparently, Caterina heard her in Marcello's room around 3 o'clock in the morning. Margherita questions Susanna about this, and she finally confesses. She was actually in the house. Everyone is confused by this, but Susanna insists she isn't the killer. She only wanted to speak with Marcello without any of them knowing. Margherita wants to know what she confided in Marcello, and Susanna decides to show her. She brings a gift box, and when Margherita opens it, she sees a pair of baby shoes. Maria comes in with their lunch, and with every meal she serves, the women get more lost in the food. They enjoy their meal like there isn't a dead body upstairs, eating till they're full. Afterward, Veronica asks Maria if she doesn't feel caged in the house since she's away from her family. Well, that doesn't seem to bother Maria at all. Veronica feels Maria isn't just working for Margherita, but has other motivations. Maria admits this, saying she was always there for Marcello. Since he is no longer there, she is now free to leave. With this, Agostina realizes Maria and Marcello were involved together, and she faints once again. Margherita goes to confront Maria, who's packing in her room. She thinks Marcello paid her, since Maria is an ordinary woman, but Maria corrects her impression. When she admits she enjoyed sleeping with him, Margherita says, "I'll have to tell the police that you were seeing someone at night and that everyone knew." This doesn't faze Maria, who replies, "I'll have to tell the police you are seeing someone at night as well," and everyone ignores it. Cats are flying out of several bags at this point. Maria feels it was convenient for Margherita, admitting she did what Margherita no longer wanted again, at least with Marcello. Seeing her secret affair exposed, Margherita leaves the room. Afterward, the women wonder why Margherita let Maria leave, but a loud sound is heard at the door just then. Maria returns, revealing someone has bolted the gate. The women are frightened again, and Katerina feels it's the same in Mysteries. She is now sure there is a killer among them. However, what helps the killer hide is the fact that one of them isn't telling the truth. She suggests, if we really want to unmask the culprit, we need everyone to confess their secrets. Who's up first? All the women feel they've confessed already, but Victoria decides to go first, although it's Agostina's secret she's revealing. She brings out a folded paper, which Agostina left in one of the many books she gave Marcello. Agostina quickly snatches it, and Veronica reveals Marcello didn't bother with the book and gave it to her. When she read the letter to him, he laughed. Guess Agostina's love isn't so platonic anymore. With her secret out, Agostina confesses the truth, admitting she had actually gone to Marcello's room last night to ask for his forgiveness concerning the letter. Like the drama queen she is, she suddenly begins having a panic attack. Katerina rushes to bring her pills, but returns empty, saying the pills are nowhere to be found. The next thing that happens surprises everyone, as Rochelle suddenly stands up from her wheelchair to get the pills. She simply says, "A Christmas miracle." Susanna brings the pills, and Agostina finally takes it. Katerina wonders where Susanna found it, and Susanna reveals it was under Margarita's bed. Margarita is shocked, insisting someone is trying to frame her. She feels none of her family would put Agostina's life in danger just to frame her. They all move towards her, leaving only Veronica as the most likely suspect. Margarita accuses her of knowing Marcello wanted to include her in his will, but Veronica denies it. However, Maria spills the tea, revealing she heard Veronica and Marcello talking about it in his room last night when she wanted to pick up his cup of tea. Veronica finally admits the truth, but insists she isn't the killer. In her opinion, Margarita is responsible since she wanted to stop this. Margarita defends herself, revealing she didn't know if Marcello had already gone to the attorney, but Veronica just says, "Then, if he made a change, suspicion falls on me. But if it's unchanged, suspicion falls on you." Rochelle wonders who else knew, and Susanna admits she did. Marcello told her last night, and planned to meet the attorney today to talk about his grandchild. Margarita begins accusing Susanna, saying she only cares about the money since they can't see the father of the child. However, Rochelle stops her, revealing Margarita was in the same situation as Susanna. Before she can finish, Margarita breaks a bottle on her head, knocking her unconscious. Everyone is shocked, but Margarita just rolls Rochelle to the pantry. Susanna refuses to drop the topic, wondering what Rochelle meant. Margarita tries to dodge the question, but Katerina plainly says, "The question is not when you were conceived, but with who?" Margarita tries deflecting, but the truth is written all over her face. With a broken heart, Susanna realizes Marcello wasn't her father. Later that evening, Margarita goes to meet her in her room and confesses the truth. She and Marcello met when she was 3 months pregnant and married long after. He agreed because he needed Rochelle's fortune in the form of a huge dowry to get his dream house. Although he never treated Susanna like she wasn't his, she asks about her real father, and Margarita admits it was her first love who passed away in an accident. She reveals she was going to leave the house, but was just waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, Veronica overhears this. Maria enters Agostina's room, but the woman is frustrated with her loveless life. She asks Maria to teach her how to attract men, and Maria shares her sacred wisdom. Margarita and Susanna arrive downstairs to find Katerina reading a book alone. They wonder where Veronica might be, and when they realize her purse is there, they decide to open it. They are shocked when Susanna brings out a small pistol, and Katerina quickly tells her to put it back so her fingerprints aren't found on it. Their attention is drawn by Agostina, who comes down as a changed woman, courtesy of Maria. She declares, "You may call me Tina." Veronica returns, saying she was in the restroom. Margarita calls her out on the pistol inside her purse, saying she wanted to shoot Marcello but found a knife instead. Veronica just reveals she hasn't touched a pistol before, and her fingerprints won't be found on it. She feels the killer is trying to frame them one by one. The power suddenly goes off, leaving the women frightened. After lighting some lamps and candles, Maria feels they need to leave the house, even if it means climbing over the gate. They all agree, but Veronica decides to stay back. Katerina tells Margarita to also stay and keep her eye on Veronica, before leaving with the rest. Veronica feels she knows Margarita's secret, telling her she has an admirer. Though she doesn't know the person, she is convinced there's someone. Margarita reveals she deeply loved Marcello, but Veronica knows this. She feels they weren't the love of Marcello's life. This gives Margarita a sense of sisterhood in Veronica, and she shares, "I had my bags packed. I was going to leave him before New Year's. I told him last night." Veronica wonders if she's leaving to be with her lover, but Margarita denies it. Though she admits she has a man, she reveals she's leaving for herself. Veronica understands, since she isn't a woman who likes marriage either. When things were beginning to look serious with Marcello back then, she left for Paris. Margarita wonders if she has a man now, and she admits she has a liaison with someone. Each is curious to know who the other's man is, but nothing could have prepared them. They say their man's name at the same time, and both realize they are seeing the same man, Gianutri. Margarita angrily slaps Veronica and begins fighting her for always taking her men. Meanwhile, the gate-climbing mission turns out to be a huge fail. They hear a voice screaming inside, and all rush to check. After Margarita and Veronica get tired of fighting, they realize they both have the same taste. This makes Margarita say, "Kiss me." Although Veronica has never kissed a woman, she draws closer, and they lock lips passionately. The rest come in just then, surprised by the scene before them. The two separate, and Margarita just tells Caterina to go bring Rochelle out of the pantry. The women sit at the fireplace, and Maria declares she's figured everything out. Looking at Caterina, she says, "I don't want to be the one to tell you all what happened. It's up to you. It's time to tell the truth." Everyone turns to Caterina, leaving her no choice but to confess. Turns out she hid behind Marcello's curtain last night and saw everything. At 10 o'clock, Rochelle enters his room, refusing to give her stocks. At 10:30, Agostina comes to beg him about the things she'd written, but he just sends her out. At 11, Margarita tells him she's leaving. At midnight, Maria comes with tea, but it isn't just a simple tea delivery. At 1 o'clock, Agostina tries again, but Marcello doesn't even let her in. At 1:30, Veronica comes to ask for money to go back to Paris, and they talk about the will. Finally, at 3, Susanna comes with her wonderful news. This leaves only Caterina, and she walks out, telling him everything she's heard. Marcello was exhausted and just couldn't take it anymore, repeatedly admitting to her that it would be so peaceful if he were to be dead. With this, Caterina decides to help him. Margarita is horrified that she is the killer, but Maria just says, "No one killed Marcello." Because Marcello wasn't murdered, Caterina confesses the big truth, admitting she and Marcello faked his death. All this while, he's been behind the door, eavesdropping on everyone to hear what they really think of him. He wanted to know who would cry the most, who would talk about money, about love. Because he had to go to the attorney today, and he wanted a clear idea for the new will. The only way to know was to pass on. Caterina faked the knife and blood on Marcello's back, and was the one who called Veronica. She set the stage for everything, even changing the keys, so Marcello wouldn't have to lie on his face all day. Maria comments that Caterina never thought anyone would see him from the window. Margarita realizes Marcello is alive, and angrily heads to his room to give him a piece of her mind. The rest follow, and Margarita begins pounding on the door. She gets the key from Caterina and finally opens it. However, Marcello isn't on the bed. Agostina points out the terrace, and they all move in that direction, but nothing prepares them for the sight they see. Marcello is lying face down on the snow, truly no longer living this time. Later that night, the police arrive, and Margarita admits, "We all tried to save Marcello, but it was too late. He threw himself down the stairs." Together, the women attribute his suicide to his poor financial state. The inspector extends his card, telling them to call if they remember anything, but Agostina quickly snatches it. She's fallen for him and makes it really obvious, leaving the poor man uncomfortable. When he leaves, Margarita says, "Caterina, you behaved badly. So women should help one another. They do not wage war." Caterina apologizes while Veronica admits the inspector was beautiful. Agostina threatens Veronica's entire existence, and Maria concurs, saying she'll help. The women wonder what they would do. Now, Marcello is no more, and they all decide to stay in the house as a family. With the inheritance, Rochelle's stock, and Susanna's baby on the way, they would definitely get the best of it. If you've made it to the end, hit the like button, comment, and share. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next recap.